tấm lụa đào phất phơ giữa chợ biết vào tay ai.
Đất nước Nam trong cơn bão tố, con tôi nằm trong cơn bão tố. Tôi muốn làm sao đem thân yêu nhỏ che chở con tôi, nhưng trái đất chuyển rung và chiếc nôi con tôi chuyển rung.
Our two salaries are no longer enough. I do some sewing in the evening for the cooperatives. We receive from time to time a package from my brothers who lives abroad. He sent us 2 kilos of MSGs, 3 kilos of wool. We sell them back to the free market and buy whatever we need. It's a very satisfying exchange. This is the same situation for almost all families. How can we do otherwise? My mother lives with us. My father is departed. 6 of us live in 2 tiny rooms. My mother is 60 years old. She is still strong and in good health to take care of the housework and to cook our meals. This leaves me some free time to do my sewing. Let's say that my job is better than the others. I belong to restaurant service Sometimes I go to the embassies when there is a reception or a dinner. I feel less isolated. I do see some foreigners going and coming, but we can't develop any relationship with them. A foreigner, in principle, is already a spy, even a socialist, or even you. We live in constant suspicion between husband and wife, between children and parents. Suspicion is everywhere. There is no mutual trust. When a foreigner gives us something, it may be because of pure sympathy for us. But it is often thought that they want to obtain something more from us. You have to know how to compose yourself to be admitted in the heart of the system. Sometimes I revolt against the fact that our children cannot have a bit of meat or fish, whereas the foreigner can sneeze at them. But Vietnam offers what it has best to the international diplomats and government staff. You should come and see at least once what the meal in a Vietnamese family is composed of.
Trong đầm gì đẹp bằng sen, lá xanh bông trắng lại chen nhĩ vàng bông trắng lá xanh, gần bùn mà chẳng hối tanh mùi buồn.
What is more beautiful than a lotus in a pond? Yellow stamens, white petals, green leaves, always near mud. It never smells of mud.
Tiếng hò la tiếng vòng nông sông là tiếng ca rồi dân nghệ tộc.
You tried to run, but I won't let you. Young woman, are you married yet? And she replied, Easy, young man, you're spilling my rice. Yes, I am with husband. His surname is Viet, and his given name is Nam.
When I first met the woman of the sect, we looked at each other with distrust, if not with hostility. Slowly, we started talking to each other. From distrust, we have come to dialogue. And this was a radical turn that have changed of my political understanding. Before, I learned in the political courses that the capitalism was the exploitation of man by man. Period. In our society, we discard all disturbing subjects so that we don't have to deal with them. We prefer to cultivate fear and suspicion. A society that imposes on its people a single way of thinking and a single way of perceiving life cannot be a human society. I ignore how a capitalist society functions. I ignore its disease between two ways of exploiting men. It is difficult for me to choose. In spite of all the years of resistance and of revolution, the same hierarchical principle exists. We cannot deny what we inherited from the China. And in spite of our own divergency with China, we are full of their customs and political conceptions. The camps of re-education are an example. You cannot kill man's conviction by reducing him to the animals. Before, I would not dare to speak up, to say what I thought. But today, the situation is different. I am deeply rebelled, and thus have turned fear into fight. I have nothing to lose other than this poor salary and some food tickets. The young people think like me. I'm not alone. The young people, they are tired to hold the gun like we hold the chopsticks. And the revolution is also the application to live, to advance human condition. Girls want to rediscover their femininity, to please, to desire. They call for laws and for colors. Look at me. I no longer have any breasts, any hip. My skin has stripes because of undernourishment. I no longer look like a woman. Our men no longer to desire us. They spend their time among themselves in cafes to drink and to smoke.
There is always a tendency to identify historical breaks and to say, this begin there, this end here, while the scene keeps on recurring, as unchangeable as change itself. Life seems suddenly fragile and vulnerable. The past surfaces, and what is almost forgotten reappears from the ruins. Nobody knows, they say, whether Ho Xuân Hương really existed or whether she was a mere name. She wrote poems in the 19th century, but they were notorious for the scandal they caused, and they continue today to defy the principles of right speech and the good manner of womanhood. So some men went as far as affirming that poems signed under her name might not be hers. They might, of course, be written by a man. Who was then, we may ask, this feminine man whose womanness was violently attacked and trashed by male poets of the time, and who wrote feminist poetry on free love, on single mothers, on labia minora and labia majora desire, who attacked polygamy and double standards of morality, who ridiculized male authority and religiosity, and who challenge all the norms of Confucian patriarchy. When he claps his hands, she has entertained. When she claps her hands, he has made a significant contribution to his village, his town, his country. The fatherland, as they call it now. For life to save another life, no more self-pride. No pride, no self. She kneels and begs mercy for him who is her son, her husband, her father.
Mình nghĩ bây giờ cô Kiều bây giờ, một cô Kiều của Quyến Du cũng không bằng hàng ngàn cô Kiều bây giờ còn bị kẹt là ở Việt Nam mà còn nhục nhằn khổ, đau khổ hơn gấp mấy lần cô Kiều của ông Quyến Du. I am a doctor with almost 20 years of experience. My husband is also a doctor. He was assigned to the military hospital of the city. When Saigon fell in 1975, we were among the most moderate. Without being communist, we are no less Vietnamese. We are nationalists. I would never erase the memory of that day from my mind. It was total panic. All our friends called us to tell us to leave. My husband and I do not know what to do. He told me, we have nothing to blame ourselves for. We are not criminals. We are from the South. If the country is divided into two, it was not because of us. Of course, my husband wore the uniform, but he wore it in spite of himself. Each government uses its citizens as its thing best. My day began at 7:30 and ended at 4:30 with a break 1 hour for lunch. Afterwards, I had to attend civil and political education courses. Every other week, I had to write a resume of my past life. I was smarter than them. I kept a copy of my first declaration. I just recopied it exactly each time, respecting the commas and the periods. In the beginning, I tried to make things work at the hospital, but slowly. We found ourselves in an atmosphere of distrust, then of suspicion. I carried out my work in a heavy silence. I stayed in the service for 2 years and would probably stay on if my husband had not been arrested. To tell the truth, we never knew the real reasons for his arrest. Today, we suppose it was a problem of power and competence. The patients refer us to the others. There was a kind of complicity among the people of the South.
Gái không chồng như cối xay chết ngóng.
When the doctors of the new regime took over the hospital, all the services worked. 2 years later, it was a disaster. The equipments were paralyzed. The stock of medicines empty. The buildings dilapidated. As the understaff of the hospital, we became cumbersome. In a way, we assisted to the failure of victory. For a week, I didn't receive any news concerning my husband. I came up against a mixed silence around me. My collaborators written me,
We are absurd petals in puff
but
of
never
wind,
asked
drifting
any
over a
questions
temporary and indifferent
on my
world.
husband's
Even the young,
disappearance.
spring-limbed and green, learn to stare at death
Everybody
through veils of white hair.
sunk
Nguyễn
into
Bình Khiêm.
silence. It was terrible to live in the world of silence.
Gánh gạo đưa chồng, tiếng khóc nỉ non. Nàng
was
về nuôi
no
cái
longer
cùng
used to it.
con.
From then on,
Để anh
I
đi
was
chạy
inhabited
nước non
by a feeling
cao
of
bằng.
terror. I discovered fear. Sometimes I did not even dare breathe for fear of myself. I didn't want to hear my own heart beating. Despair sitting down within me. I had given up all form of resistance. After 3 months in that atmosphere, I decided to quit my job. As for my husband, I was left without news. I had to find out by myself the reasons for his arrest. The question that kept on coming back in my mind was, why did they wait 2 years before sending him to that camp of re-education? I prefer to forget that moment when I saw my husband in his prison clothes, looking desperate. It is a painful memory. "25 months. 25 months in hell. My nerves cracked. My children were neglected like orphans. The only reasonable solution was to quit that job, to accept to lose the ration tickets, and to live in uncertainty. I earn $80 per month, a salary of destitution in a path of humiliation. I am not the ideal person to be interviewed. Cô Kiều,
I
cái
have
cuộc đời
never
của Kiều
had
là rất là
a
đoạn
passion for
nhưng mà chị nghĩ
politics,
cũng có hàng
although
trăm,
this
hàng
does
ngàn
not
những
mean
cái
Then
cuộc
I'm
đời
not
như vậy,
interested
chứ
in
không
it.
không không riêng cô Kiều.
How tragic is woman's fate, wrote Nguyễn Du. In Vietnam, almost everybody, poor or rich, uses verse from the Kim Văn Kiều fluently in their daily expressions, also known as the Tale of Kiều. The national epic poem recounts the misfortunes of women in the person of a beautiful, talented woman, Kiều, whose love life has repeatedly served as a metaphor for Vietnam's destiny. The heroine, a perfect model of Confucian feminine loyalty and piety, was forced by circumstance to sacrifice her life to save her father and brother from disgrace and humiliation, and to sell herself to become a prostitute, then a concubine, a servant, and a nun, before she was able to come back to her first lover. Kim Văn Kiều was written in the early 19th century in the people's language Nôm. Despite its length of 3,254 lines, it became so popular that it was widely cherished by all social strata only a few decades after it appeared. Illiterate people knew long passages of it by heart and recited it during evening gatherings. It has also been loved for its unorthodox approach to sexuality. Although Kiều destiny is meant to be sadly complicated because of the woman's beauty, she not only freely chooses her lover, but she also eagerly loves 3 men. Her life offers a revisionist interpretation of the Confucian principle of chastity that governed the conduct of women. I wish to use my body as a torch to dissipate the darkness, to awaken love among people and bring peace to Vietnam. Nhật Chí Mai poured gasoline over her body and lit the match.
Socialist Vietnam venerates the mothers and the wives. The woman does not exist. She is only a labor force. The liberation of the woman is understood here as a double exploitation. The men want to keep the better share of the cake. They hold the key positions of power. The women only to get the leftovers. There is not a single woman at the political bureau. The men are the only one to discuss problems that concern us. As for the women's union, the mother-in-law's union, they have made of us heroic workers, virtuous women, and we are good mothers, good wives, heroic fighters, good women with no humanity. They explore us in the shop windows for foreign visitors who come to look at our life, as if we were polite animals. The image of the woman is magnified like a saint, and we are only human beings. Why don't we want to admit these women, they are tired to see their children exposed to war, deprivations, epidemics, and disease. The very idea of heroism is horrible. The woman is alone. She lives alone. She raised her children alone. She gives birth alone. It is a sea of solitude. The revolution is allowed to the woman to have access to working world. She worked to deprive herself better, to eat less, and she had to get used to the poverty. Love. When I was young, I wanted to become a writer. My parents told me, you have to write with your heart, but don't forget your heart belongs to the body. So how to write then? I therefore quit the writing for a more scientific profession. Love. Personally, I had to curse this word from my vocabulary. I no longer want to remember. I live in total emptiness around me, perhaps inside me. Yes, we had to live for love. It is an emotion that escapes man's control, that happens inside the body, a very personal intimacy. I end up to love my bicycle, my own bicycle, with its own tires. I have a sincere affection for it because it helped me when I'm tired. It is a loyal companion. It keeps me company in my morning solitude. It takes me home in my distress in the evening. It is the only witness of my movements. I am willing to talk, but you should not have doubts about my words. There is the image of the woman, and there is a reality. Sometimes the two do not go well together. I am 35 years old, the age of resistance movement and revolution. I do not know what a society of peace looks like. My childhood was that of struggle. I am a child of the party. My parents are high cadre. They had to feed me with the revolutionary discourse since my childhood. My childhood was secure. I was pampered, cherished, and there was always adequate answer to my questions. I went to school with a wrist cap around my neck, and at 16 years old, I was trusted an important role. I was a leader in my university. I was taught discipline and rigor. Life would go on smoothly if there had not been a liberation of the South, the reunification and my being transferred to Saigon, a painful confutation in death.
Even you who live in the West, if you are admired and liked, it's because we women of Vietnam, we work so that your image may be beautiful. We contribute to the respect the world has for Vietnamese women. Ái Trần from Vietnam. The two sisters, Trinh T and Trinh T, of Vietnam's earliest history of resistance, are proudly remembered for the uprising they led in fighting against Chinese domination. Every year in springtime, on the 60th day of the second moon, young Hai Bà Trưng are seen parading on their elephants in the community in LA. It is fantasized that to conquer the female armies, the only successful strategy the Chinese soldiers finally came up with was to strip themselves to the skin and expose their thing shamelessly to the sight of their female opponents. The women fighters retreated in disgust, and the Trinh sisters committed suicide. The stories that grew around the beloved heroines of Vietnam history tell about both the dreams of women and the fears of the men who fought or heard of such account. Popular descriptions of the physical appearance of the sisters Trinh are often confusingly similar to those of Triệu Thị Trinh, another cherished figure in the memory of the Vietnamese, and a young peasant woman who led 30 battles against the Chinese. She was said to be 9 feet tall, with frightful breasts 3 meters long, flying over her shoulders as she rode on an elephant. She, too, committed suicide rather than return to serfdom when her army was defeated.
Tôi muốn cười cơn gió mạnh, đạp đường sóng dữ, chém cá tràng kinh. Ở bề đông, quét bờ còi để cứu dân ra khỏi nơi đắm đuối, chứ không thèm bắt chước người đời, cúi đầu cong lưng làm tỳ thiếp cho người ta.
We call her Triệu Thị Trinh, but also Triệu Trinh Vương, Triệu Trinh, Triệu Ẩu, Bà Triệu. The market remains women's city. It is the heart of daily life, where information is exchanged and where rumors are spread. It is also at the market that one tastes the real popular cooking of the country.
My worthless husband gambles all day. If I told the world, we would both be shamed. Don't laugh, it's true. I'm the daughter of a Confucian house, a work of art sold to a stupid bumpkin. That's what I am, a golden dragon bathing in a dirty pond.
They spread on the pavements, their baskets full of merchandise, and wait patiently.
Sông gửi nạc, thác gửi sương.
I will tell you the lives of women who are the misfits of history. They are, by the thousands, those who live in economic distress. They sell everything that is marketable, including their bodies, to support their family. They deny their dignity to survive and become prostitutes in a socialist society. Are you asking me if there are social services to help them? You must be dreaming. You underestimate the trauma of the women of the South. We suffered the war lie on our women compatriots. This war went on without our consent. We were strapped along like in a tornado, crushed in the machine, and nobody could stop it. Today, many women must demean themselves because they have no choice at all. Some accept to live with a cadre simply because of economical necessity. They often dare buy tickets and protection. Sometimes they do it with the bad intention, in the hope that their husband may be liberated. Time goes by, and they see nothing happening. Sometimes a woman finds herself pregnant, but goes to the camp to visit her husband. She stands there in front of him with this ballet of humiliation. He looks down and remains silent. I will spare you of the most sordid dramas that many women live through.
Hoa thơm mất nhị đi rồi, còn thơm đâu nữa mà người ước ao.
When the smoke clears, the inevitable roundup of prisoners, many of them seriously wounded. Among the captured, a large group of women, traditionally used by the enemy as ammunition bearers, village infiltrators, and informers.
Always recurring in the prisoner's mind is the fear of a time when the witnesses themselves die without witnesses, when history consists of tiny explosions of life and of death without relays. The witnesses go on living to bear witness to the unbearable.
Trồng trành như nón không quay, như thuyền không lái, như ai không chồng. Gái có chồng như gông đeo cũ, gái không chồng như phán gỗ long đanh. Sông bao nhiêu nước cho dừa, trai bao nhiêu giờ.
Selling one's body remains an active trade. A Vietnamese woman journalist said, "Nothing runs in our blood except venereal disease. Women do not become prostitutes for pleasure. They suffer the countershocks of our country's history. French colonization, American presence, long war years that have dismantled our society. Today, all we have left is the promise for a better society. But the sun rises every morning on anguish and uncertainty. It goes down every evening with the fear of not being able to nourish one's family."
My mother married me off to a child. God knows there was no lack of young men. And now his mauling is all the love I get. He falls asleep and snores till morning. I ask you, what kind of spring is this? Sisters, how many times is a flower to bloom?
Chém cha cái kiếp lấy chồng chung, kẻ đắp chăn bông, kẻ lạnh lùng. Năm thì 10 họa nên chăng chớ, 1 tháng đôi lần có cùng không. Cố đấm ăn sôi sôi lại hầm, cầm bằng làm mướn không công. Thân này vì biết giường này nhỉ, thà trước thời đành ở vậy xong.
My sister lives in the South. I went to see her after the reunification. More than 20 years of absence and of separation. But my sister did not choose exile. We are too attached to our family lineage. It was like a miracle to find ourselves there facing each other again. My sister sat still. She was staring at me as if I came from another planet. I could see a glimmer of revolt in her eyes. Suddenly, her cold, craved voice told me, "You, my little sister, the socialist doctor." She took up from her chair, took my hands, and led me to the mirror. "Look at yourself at least once." I have not, indeed. Look at myself in the mirror for years, and I saw an old, worn-out woman. I gazed at my own image with sustained attention and realized I wore the same clothes, the same wooden shoes, since the night of time. I did not think another world existed. I was stirred to the depth of my soul by a mad anguish. And my mind became confused. I became aware of my own existence. Peace restored. Our problems have increased. The professional relation had deteriorated. Equality between men and women still figures on the program. But the relation between the women themselves are most uncomfortable. The officer in charge is a woman, but she is not a doctor. Her function is above all political. She is there to control the ideological aspect of profession. A conflict has arisen between her and the health technician. It is a problem of power, political power versus professional competence. We have been trained to think that women had to please a man to the detriment of another woman. If women could trust women, then we could talk about liberation.
Dear sister, what we loved most at the time, my girlfriends and I, was to be able to buy little snacks to pass them on secretly to each other during class. Oh my, xí muội, chè đậu đỏ, chè đậu trắng. How would you translate these into English? I am thrilled just at naming them. It was a real treat to savor them at one of these street vendors' carts. in front of Zalong School, or Ngã Sáu, not far from our house, where jia sum bo lượng was their specialty. I gave some private lessons then, and had some pocket money I could spend. Since Mother had always forbade us to eat on the street, I felt particularly excited to do so, and to taste anything that appeared novel to me. When I think about them now, they're really nothing special, but the fact that they were forbidden made all the difference. My friend, who was from Central Region, said in Hue, girls coming back from school in hats and white aozai crowded the Zhengdian Bridge every afternoon, their tunic flapping softly in the wind like butterflies. Every young man had gone through a period when he would regularly find himself standing there, just to look and contemplate. If he followed her on the left, she would pull her head down on the left side of her face. If he stepped to the right, she would pull it down to the right side to prevent him from looking, while she kept glancing at him at leisure. The majority of the people there wrote and appreciated poetry, perhaps because of its unforgettable landscapes, just like those in the north about which Mother and Father so often told us.
Gió đưa cánh trục lá đa, tiếng chuông thiên mụ cánh gà thọ sướng.
Người đàn bà Việt Nam có hai cái đức tính mà lúc nào tôi cũng rất là phục họ, đó là cái sự hy sinh và cái chịu đựng. Everything is published. We receive our patient in a cold, large hall, in the presence of the officer in charge. It is very difficult to establish trust. How do you want a woman to disclose her intimate sufferings when there is no intimacy to reserve professional confidence? It is impossible to feel for someone's pains and suffering when there is no complicity between a doctor and her patient. Once a woman understood nothing to her body, to hygiene and to contraception, she came to see me and shyly whispered these to me. Vietnamese woman do not unburden herself easily to someone. She is caught in the prejudice, inhibition, and taboos. In the old societies, body was an unnamed place, not non-existent and not talked of. If woman's body got sick, it was immediately thought that she had had sexual relations outside the norm. Even today, this mentality continues to bloom in our society. Ignorance drives women to the worst of silence.
To marry and have a child, how banal. But to be pregnant without the help of a husband, what merit. Ho Xuân Hương. Up there, a hanging panel, the governor's shrine. Oh well, if I were turned into a man, I'd do better things than that. Ho Xuân Hương.
Doctors, women who relieve other women,
As in the fairy tale, the flowers falling from my lips are changed into toads.
She helps, he directs. She directs, he rings.
It is a contempt for human efforts to believe that we adopt ourselves even to poverty. Our fellow people who live abroad do sometimes have the same reasoning. They come back to their native lands to visit their relatives. They temporarily share their promiscuity. Then they go away. They can effort a small effort of heroism and adapt themselves to unusual surroundings. But for those of us who remain in the country, we had to go on living this life without joys of pride. To say that we are courageous and heroic beings is to pay a tribute to our revolution, but to over-valorize us is, in a way, to deny our human force.
Ai vô Bình Định mà coi, đàn bà cũng biết cầm roi đi quân.
The notorious double day flashes back in my memory. Women work as a full unit of economic production and do all the unpaid housework and childcare. Popular sayings qualify the 3 steps of her life and her victimization as that of a lady before marriage, that of a maid during marriage, and that of a monkey long after marriage.
It is only to hide her exploitation that they flatter her conceits. Let us take the example of the street sweepers. These women are doing a very repellent work. They select few of them and put them on the platform during the Congress or a meeting. They make them read the political discourse quickly put together by men. And the trick missed with success. These women forget for a while that they are sweepers and have the illusion of being full citizens. I am caught between 2 worlds.
And I would have
This
to affirm this
society
uncertainty
which I
is a
reject,
translated interview, a written
and the
or a spoken
capitalism
object.
which I do not know.
Our bosses are often men. Women assist them. This is what equality amounts to. We fight very tightly for our right, but the men always succeed to win over. Sometimes they may make a few compromises because we outweigh them in number. In meetings, women never take the floor to claim or demand. They speak but only in a feminine spirit, a spirit too eager to please their boss. They can simply say we think or we want. They only submit such and such opinion. They listen and they raise their little fingers. It's very difficult to speak freely when one does not have the power. The guardians of women's union are our mothers-in-law. They recite texts written by men and put women in the work market.
We must fight for a more equitable society. And when we will have won the fight against bureaucracy, sweep away the incompetent crowd, then we will have made a first step toward revolution. And this task also belongs to the woman. Women have been always educated to sacrifice themselves.
Women do not dare say they are being mistreated by their husbands. They are ashamed. Meetings are the places where different ideas are minimized.
You have to be careful when you look at our society. There is the form and there is the content. Truth is not always found in what is visible. Our reality is inhabited by silent tears and sobs. Women's liberations, you are still joking, aren't you?
Interview. An antiquated device of documentary. Truth is selected, renewed, displaced, and speech is always tactical.
So how many interviews in the overall? Whom do you choose?
In one case, 150 interviews were made for the film. 5 were retained in the final version.
What criteria?
Age, profession, economical situation, cultural regions, north, south, and center, critical ability, personal affinity. Spoken, transcribed, and translated. From listening to recording, speech to writing. You can talk, we can cut, trim, tidy up. The game often demands a response to the content, rarely to the way that content is framed. Spoken and read, between a language of inwardness and that of pure surface.
Dear sister, there was something particularly pleasurable in going to an ice cream place to enjoy a drink in Vietnam. I feel no such excitement here, where ice cream shops have no ambience. To find such pleasure again, one has to go all the way to Houston, Texas, or Santa Ana, California, where Vietnamese communities form their own towns and villages. It sounds like getting old and outdated.
The pose is always present, and accidents on film are known as controlled accidents. The more intimate the tone, the more successful the interview. Every question she and I come up with is more or less a copy of a question we have heard before. Even if the statement is original, it sounds familiar, worn, threadbare. By choosing the most direct and spontaneous form of voicing and documenting, I find myself closer to fiction.
Morning, teachers. Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Hiền Trần, Vincent's mom. Today I have a chance to talk to you about the Vietnamese woman dress. Áo dài, we call it áo dài. Vietnam has over 4,000 years of history. In the beginning, the Vietnamese woman dress had composed of 3 pieces, 1 in the back and 2 in front, and 2 pieces they tie together.
Anh cứ nhủ rằng em không thương, em đo lường thì rất cặn kẽ. Chính thương anh nên em bàn với mẹ, phải ngăn anh không đi chuyện ngược lương. Dần thì dần mà thương thì thương, dần thì dần mà thương thì thương.
In 1744, Vietnamese king Viet, he asked all Vietnamese women had to dress with a pen like this.
Hi, good morning, teacher and everybody. I just would like to show you that the áo dài were designed by Madame New, like musician just told you.
Oh, I tell you, first time in my life, I never know how to carry the water in 2 shoulders. It just like they buying me, but I had to do it. I act real good. Then after 3 months, they thought that I become a company. I come to be country girl, not Saigon people no more. So because they always watching us, day by day, time by time, even at lunch. They open the door, go right away in my kitchen, and they want to watch what I eat. But you know what? We only eat a little bit egg, xào trứng, and a little bit vegetable right in our ground. I pick up that and we eat.
Do you translate by eye or by ear? Translation seeks faithfulness and accuracy, and ends up always betraying either the letter of the text, its spirit, or its aesthetics. The original text is always already an impossible translation that renders translation impossible.
I can speak English a little bit. Also my husband. Yeah! And I say, no, please, sir. No, I don't want to escape. Because if I want to escape, I escaped about years ago. When the first Saigon fell, I can go in the harbor, a lot of ship over there. I can jump over there and I escape. But no, I love our country. After my husband were a real education from the government. Yeah. So I love the country. Yeah. So please don't shoot me. No. He said that you tell me the truth. I said I'm sure. Then because then I read the book. My husband were in labor camp. They taught him about the political. Yeah, one way. I read it. I know how to talk. I said, well, I believe in the government. I believe in the chairman. So we have liberation. Why I have to escape? Yeah, I am Vietnamese. I don't know how to speak English. Why I have to escape? I convinced him, and he said, hey, he called me Chị Tư. Because I changed my name. I don't want to call Thiên. I named Chị Tư. Then he said, Chị Tư, what is your education? What level? I said, well, I only talk a lot. So I cannot hide that I'm no education.
Nó ăn rồi, con nó ăn rồi. Kia, look. Eat my food.
Only 15 minutes. It takes me 15 days to see him. Only 15 minutes. Then I had to come back to Saigon. So after I listened to my husband, when I get home, I sold all the things in the furniture, radio, TV, good clothes, everything. Go to the free market, and from that I become a sales lady
in the street, on the street, in the street. I buy things and resell it, get the profit to take care of my children.
Có chồng chẳng được đi đâu, có con chẳng được đứng lâu một giờ, có con phải khổ vì con, có chồng phải gánh sang sơn nhà chồng. Lóc nãy con đó
Lông gì nè, đổ thấy không?
The exiled. But if I don't have roots, why have my roots made me suffer so?
Running mute among other survivors, your heartbeats echoing with each footstep, you were led by an American officer to a large, deadly silent auditorium, where suddenly, upon opening the door, you found yourself in the company of thousands of voiceless presence, a soundless, densely packed mass of people, awaiting their turn to be lifted off the ground.
No, it was 1976, yeah. 12 years later, I work with Hughes Company. They put me in the fire. They say 5+. That one I will get her. And I look at the file. I said, no, I cannot work. They say, no. I talked to my supervisor. I said, no, please. He said, why? What's the matter? I said, well, every time I look at the file, my nightmare come back. And I'm thinking at the time I was in Vietnam, the bombing. And he said, Kian, be cool. He's my supervisor and also my neighbor. He said, Kian, according to your story, you have been through a lot. What's the matter with the fire? I know you do it. Do it, Kian. Don't give up. And he gave me some energy, and I said, oh yeah, why not? Then you know what? Then I do it. I was too small, then the filers were highlighted. You know what? Every time when I read the poem to open, you know what? I had to jump like that. I had to do jump over, open. And even sometimes my hair will burn and my eyelids will burn too. And I even don't know. I just try to do the work, get the money to raise the children. Then my worker, right? Yeah, she said, Kian, you burn your hair. I said, well, is that right? And you look, I touch my hair. It just look like bún tàu mà nướng vậy đó. Yeah. Yeah. So then and I smell it. And I say, oh yeah. And I touch my eyelash. It all so curly, you know.
But you couldn't give the work to someone else, or?
No, they say that when I only decide, they hide me. There's no way. Then they told me that they know that I'm small, but I'm very, very strong in here. So they know that I make it.
You asked me to write about what I remember most from my stay at the refugee camp in Guam. I shall never forget the day when we left. I was suffering from excruciating stomach pains and was getting ready to go and see the doctor when an American officer showed up to tell us we had to leave in 5 minutes. As you knew, since Father chose not to leave at the time, we were 4 women then, mother and daughters. Upon our arrival at the airport, with our meager bundles of clothes, we were struck by the sight of people carrying suitcases of all sizes. Mother, who had had experience in fleeing war on foot, was convinced not only that we had to reduce our belongings to the minimum, but also that the clothes we wore and carried should be dark-colored so not as to draw any attention to ourselves as women. The Americans were brash and coarse, and they were yelling at us as if we were a bunch of cattle or pigs. At Guam, a limited number of tents and folding beds were thrown at the flock. People panicked, and everybody was shouting and crying. As the law of the jungle dictated, Only the most physically brutal and aggressive succeeded to lay hand on these things. We could not compete with the men. We waited till nighttime before additional beds and tents were brought in. None of us could really sleep for weeks, especially Mother, whose anguish in sharing a tent with others came not from the fear of theft, but that of rape. Most unbearable was the public washing and toilet facilities enclosed in some crudely assembled wooden structures. The latter were mere holes dug in the ground, in which overspilling excrements could never be evacuated fast enough and could be smelled at miles and miles away. I was so obsessed by this that even today, when I go to national parks, it is a real ordeal for me to be forced to use these restroom facilities. However distant the memory, I can hardly bear the sight and smell of these wooden cabins.
Oh, sorry. No, I just got a cold call from my mom a second ago. And I just sitting here thinking, I can't believe how much change she went through since we came here.
Since we came to
my
Berkeley?
mom adapted. No, since I got
Vietnam.
from Vietnam to America. And she went through so much transition from one culture to another. You know, just like, remember the spandex pants you bought me?
No.
Like snakeskin pattern,
You didn't
skin
show her
tight.
those.
I didn't mean to. Like New Year's Eve, and I brought it home, you know. And I put them on, and I didn't have a matching sweater, so I asked her. If she had like a black or gray sweater. She goes, oh, well, here. So she gave me the sweater. And I was going to sneak out the door. Like, you won't see me, but no. She comes out, she's like, let me see those pants and see what you're wearing.
I can't believe it. Oh,
I thought she was going to be scandalized, like, oh my God, it's too tight. She took one look, she's like, oh, I can't believe how much that matches. I was just looking like, no. And, you know, she took a look at me and she's like, you know, if you wore that a couple months ago, you would have been overweight, but I think you lost just about enough weight so you look great. It looks really nice. I like that design. I can't believe she had my pants. And when I was looking for a sweater in her closet, she had like these leopard skin patterns, like silky shirts, you know, something that I would wear. I couldn't believe Mom's going wild on me. No, but that's just one of the things. I mean, I see so much like gradual change from her.
Well, you helped her a lot.
Even the whole values. Well, it's not so much help. It's like I put her through a lot. It's like, see, you know.
Yeah, but remember
like,
when you first moved out from after high school and you moved out of the house? That was a big traumatic ordeal.
Yeah, traumatic.
Yeah, but that's.
I am like a jackfruit on a tree. To taste me you must plug me quick. While fresh, the skin rough, the pulp thick. Yes, but oh, I warn you against touching. The rich juice will gush and stain your hands. Hồ Xuân Hương.
Chè la chè lẩy, con gái bảy nghề, ngồi lê là một, dựa cột là hai, ăn khoai là ba, ăn quà là bốn, trốn việc là năm, hay nằm là sáu, hay ăn rồi cháo là bảy.
Dear Minh-ha, since the publication of the book, I felt like having lost a part of myself. It is very difficult for a Vietnamese woman to write about Vietnamese women. At least in France, where in spite of the Mouvement de Libération de la Femme, maternalism remains the cornerstone of the dominant ideology. To have everything as it should be, I should have accepted a preface from Simone de Beauvoir, as my publisher had wished. million Vietnamese dispersed around the globe. It will take more than one generation for the wounds to heal. Of course, the image can neither prove what it says, nor why it is worth saying it. The impotence of proof, the impossibility of a single truth, in witnessing, remembering, recording, rereading. As I was about to leave her, she reached for a magazine and asked whether I had heard or read about the refugees, especially the mountain peoples, who had passed away in their sleep without any evidence of heart attack or any other recognizable disease. The reporters described this as one of those mysterious, inscrutable Oriental phenomena, but I think they die of acute sadness. Buồn thối ruột, sad to the extent that one's bowels rot, as we commonly say.
Hoàng Phương, xin cô cho biết những điểm đặc biệt của nền văn hóa Việt Nam cần phải duy trì trong xã hội Hoa Kỳ.
Theo tôi nghĩ, nền văn hóa Việt Nam những điều mà nên cần duy trì. Nói riêng cho người phụ nữ Việt Nam là tôi nghĩ nên phải giữ những truyền thống Việt Nam và những đức tính công dung ngôn hạnh của những người Việt Nam.
Phận gái tứ đức giảng tuyển, công dung ngôn hạnh. Họ công dung ngôn hạnh, giữ gìn chẳng sai. Tại gia tòng phụ, xuất giá tòng phu, phu tử tòng tử. Họ theo luân lý tam cương ngũ thường, đàn bà khi nào cũng phải tùy thuộc đàn ông. Khi con nhỏ thì phải theo cha, khi lấy chồng thì phải theo chồng, khi chồng chết thì phải theo con, suốt đời là kẻ vi thanh nhân. Họ phải dựa vào một người đàn ông làm chủ chốt, chứ không bao giờ họ chứ không bao giờ được độc lập.
I need you help me something.
Yeah, Kim, what you need?
Okay, I want to make sure about the cable I put in here. L304.
Ở Việt Nam thì chị lo trong gia đình thôi. Chị nghỉ học rồi chị đi lập gia đình rồi có cháu thì chị ở nhà thôi chứ chị không có đi làm. Nhưng mà qua đây thì nhà thơ bảo trợ đó, họ tìm những cái công việc nhẹ chẳng hạn như là đi giữ trẻ. Thì độ chừng một tháng sau thì chị đi dạy học. Nhưng mà dạy học tiếng Pháp trong một cái trường tiểu học đó, độ 3-4 tháng thôi. Thì chị mới đi vào một cái viện dưỡng lão chị làm xong độ chừng nửa năm thì chị mới bắt đầu chị xin vào làm được một hãng điện của chính phủ ở đây. Cái việc của chị là draft về electrical drafting cho một cái hãng nó coi về điện, đập nước với máy điện, tức là vẽ về máy và điện luôn, cho từ 1976 77 cho đến bây giờ luôn. Về cái nghề của chị thì chỉ có về đàn bà chỉ có duy nhất là chị làm. Lúc đầu á, thì khi mà cô hỏi chị ngại lắm, chị không có dám đâu. Nhưng mà sau đó chị nghĩ tại sao mình là người đàn bà Việt Nam mà cái vai này về người đàn bà Việt Nam mà không có cái gì mà, tức là nói lên cái sự thật người đàn bà Việt Nam còn bị kẹt lại Việt Nam, hay là người đàn bà Việt Nam qua xứ Mỹ. Thì tôi nghĩ mình là người Việt Nam thì không có lý do mình từ chối. Tôi có nhất là cái phim này không phải show, tuy là bạn nhưng mà nó là chơi với con thôi. Nó đến nhà là nó Mỹ mà nó thích người Việt Nam. Thành ra cậu mới nói là commercial chẳng hạn như show vậy. Thôi bà bác đóng cái vai đó đi, nếu mà bác đóng cái vai đó đó thì mai mốt
là như là những minh tinh Hollywood mà là
có
một
thể
phim
biết
thời
đâu là
sự.
bác đóng để bác nói lên những cái gì ấm ức của chị bác với mẹ bác ở Việt Nam. Thành ra vì mình nghĩ mình thương nói chung người đàn bà Việt Nam mà mình muốn involve cho cái phim.
Tôi đọc báo tôi thấy
Mình cũng có những người bà vì còn kẹt lại Việt
là
Nam
một cái người
thì
đạo diễn mà làm phim
so với cái vai trò mà cái bà Cát Tiên đây thì tôi thấy còn nhiều cái còn nhọc nhằn hơn. Chẳng hạn có nhiều bà đóng con phải đi lo. Ngày trước là bà cũng bà này bà kia có học vợ chồng là có địa vị, nhưng bây giờ có bà phải đi bán chè, có bà phải đi chạy công việc để
tôi được hãnh diện về cô
có tiền của gia đình đó thật. Người đàn bà Việt Nam nói chung thì hoài thí dụ như con gái thì bao giờ mình đi học thì con gái đàn bà phải công dung ngôn hạnh ở nhà. Nhà tôi nói thì mình cứ làm, mình những cái gì mà mình có thể làm được cho xứ sở, cho người nhất là cho riêng người đàn bà Việt Nam thì em cứ làm, chứ không có cái gì mà xấu khi mình làm một cái phim.
Chẳng hạn như
lập gia đình thì gọi là xuất gia tuần phu thì nghĩa là thì phải nghe lời chồng, không hẳn như là ngày xưa nói là phụ tử tùng tử chẳng hạn vậy, thì cũng không đến đội. Những người bạn tôi thì có nhiều ý nghĩ cũng thí dụ tôi hỏi một bà bạn tôi thì bà trợn mắt nói trời ơi bà mà làm phim hả, bà có bao giờ bà làm minh tinh đó mà làm phim. Rồi có hỏi có người bạn của chồng tôi thì ông lại nói thôi người ta đã biết bà làm phim thì chắc người ta chọn đúng người rồi, biết đâu mai mốt bà làm phim hay quá rồi người Mỹ họ thấy bà sẽ thành movie star. Chị cứ nghĩ loanh quanh mình, dù mình qua đây bất cứ thế nào mà họ mình Việt thì tên mình phải là Nam, là phải Việt Nam. Người đàn bà Việt Nam mình nghĩ gần gũi nhất là cái gia đình của chồng con mình. Còn chẳng hạn như đất nước hay là quê hương mình cái gì thì người nào dù lớn bé già gì đi khỏi đất nước thì cũng thương và cũng bao giờ mình vẫn là người Việt, họ Việt tên Nam, chứ không bao giờ mà dù là thí dụ trong hoàn cảnh mà có những người con gái mà lập gia đình với người Mỹ hay là những người ngoại quốc ở đây thì họ cũng nghĩ là họ Việt Nam. Thì chị nghĩ cái đề tựa của cái phim cô cũng hay lắm, cũng có ý nghĩa.
One thing the man said he learned to let go of while in prison is identity. The singular naming of a person, a race, a culture, a nation.
How do you say it in Vietnamese?
Gia nhân mới là gia nhân. Gia nhân. Sau là gia nhân. Thì lúc mình về phục vụ ông mình thành gia nhân. Xong một thời gian sau ở viết rồi chữ già rồi khi mình thành gia nhân.
Nhân. The meaning that's like person. Yeah. That's why they use 3 times nhân. But the meaning different.
So how do you translate that?
Before you're married, you're a lady.
Yeah. After marry, you will be a maid.
A maid.
Then after be a maid, and you will be a monkey.
Not that bad.
But I don't think I will be gia nhân.
Tụt xuống cho bố nhờ các con.
Vietnamese adjusting to their new lives, mastering elevators and escalators, learning wristwatch-type punctuality, taming vending machines, distinguishing dogs' canned foods from human canned foods, and understanding that it was not permissible to wander the streets, the hotels, or anywhere outside in pajamas.
Trước hết khi mà nhận lời làm cái này giúp chị Hà thiện nghị, là chị Hà nói rằng là cái tựa đề của cái phim là về người đàn bà Việt Nam, mà giống như nói trước vậy vẫn ca ngợi hai cái tính của đàn bà Việt Nam, đó là cái sự hy sinh với chịu đựng của người đàn bà Việt Nam. Thành đến nói thôi đây là cái dịp mà để Yến nêu lên cái tính nói lên về người đàn bà Việt Nam. Thành Yến nhận là rất là
khó khăn, tại vì lúc đó quá sức là bận rộn. Nhưng mà khi đã làm rồi thì Yến cố gắng, Yến làm với hết khả năng của Yến. Tại Yến nghĩ cái này không phải là cái chuyện làm cá nhân, mà chuyện làm cho một cái tập thể. Những quan niệm ngày xưa mà nói đóng phim hoặc là ca hát thì những người xưa họ không có chấp nhận cái chuyện đó. Họ nói là trong một gia đình đàng hoàng cổ kính thì người đàn bà không có được dính tới vấn đề phim ảnh ca hát. Vậy ngày xưa họ hay có những cái danh từ mà liệt vào những người đó rất là thấp. Nhưng mà hồi sau này thì ảnh hưởng Tây phương cái vấn đề phim ảnh, cái nghệ thuật, thì lúc nào đa số thì ai cũng thích đóng những người đàn bà đẹp đẽ trong cái phim. Thành ra khi mà tất cả bạn bè mà nghe nó đóng người đàn bà Việt Nam 60 tuổi thì ai cũng giật mình. Mỗi ngày thì đi làm từ trước 8 giờ sáng cho đến 6 giờ chiều. Về tới nhà thì được khoảng gần 7 giờ. Thì sau đó thì Yến phải vội vàng nấu cơm để mà lo cho Diệp với lại An. Sau khi Diệp với An ăn xong thì lúc đó Yến bắt đầu tập dượt để mà quay cái phim này. Sau cái phim đó, lúc đó Yến mới có thời giờ để mà ăn tối rồi mới lo để mà đi làm, để cho An đi học với lại ngày mai mình đi làm. Từ ngày tôi qua đây thì tôi sống ở Mỹ cho đến bây giờ được 16 năm. Sau đó thì tôi vô làm về chemical processing cho một hãng điện tử, làm được gần 10 năm. Cái số mà kỹ sư Việt Nam vô làm trong mấy cái hãng kỹ thuật thì càng ngày càng đông. 8-9 năm về trước chỉ có 3-4 người kỹ sư thôi. Rồi từ từ cái số đã tăng lên, tại vì những người qua đây năm 75 đã học, xong rồi họ ra trường rồi họ đi làm. Thành ra bây giờ số kỹ sư Việt Nam ở Motorola có thể 30-40 người, nhưng mà chỉ có 2 người đàn bà Việt Nam thôi.
Có 2 người thôi.
Khi mà mới vô làm thì cũng gặp khó khăn. Thứ nhất là mình là người Á Đông, thứ nhì nữa là mình là đàn bà. Thành ra có hai cái đó mình gặp khó khăn, mình phải khắc phục cái khó khăn đó. Ví dụ như người Mỹ họ nhìn về người Việt Nam những năm trước cũng giống như là một nước nhược tiểu. Không, bây giờ mình bước vô cái ngành professional, mình compete cho nó thì tự nhiên nó nhìn mình hơi, họ không có lộ hẳn ra cho mình thấy, nhưng mình có thể mường tượng được rằng là họ có vẻ họ không chấp nhận cái vấn đề. Càng ngày càng đông những người mà có bằng tiến sĩ mà người Á Đông vô làm trong sở. Nhất là những cái ngành mà về nghiên khảo cổ thì đa số là Á Đông. Dạ, trong tuần đó đòi hỏi phải có bằng tiến sĩ. Vấn đề đám cưới của người em trai mà theo tục lệ của gia đình thì ba của Yến mất sớm. Yến là chị lớn nhất, mà mẹ bây giờ thì lớn tuổi. Thành cái đó là cái bổn phận Yến phải lo cho mấy em. Trong nguyên tuần lễ đó bị phân phối rất là nhiều chuyện.
Thế những người Việt Nam xung quanh đó chị, khi họ biết tới là chị đóng phim đó thì họ nói như thế nào?
Thứ nhất là họ nhìn, cái nhìn của họ không có giống như cái mục đích là tại sao mà Yến làm. Thì cái nhìn của họ là họ cười, họ tưởng Yến đóng phim thì ai cũng gọi là chọc là thành tài tử, mai mốt kiếm đủ tiền khỏi phải đi làm. Như nói về thời xưa, những người Việt Nam, người đàn bà Việt Nam đi làm dâu phải chịu đựng rất là nhiều. Gần như là họ không có sống cho bản thân của họ. Khi nhỏ, sống trong gia đình, mọi cái quyết định là do người cha quyết định. Rồi khi mà họ lập gia đình thì họ phải theo phong tục bên gia đình chồng. Thì tất cả những cái quyết định là do gia đình chồng hoặc là người chồng quyết định. Họ là Việt, tên là Nam. Có nghĩa nếu mà tỷ dụ như hỏi là
cô đã lập gia đình chưa. Thì có thể là tôi nghĩ muốn người đó là vẫn muốn lập gia đình với người chồng Việt Nam và muốn giữ phong tục Việt Nam. Có thể là họ muốn là một người chồng của họ có lòng ái quốc. Người năng ba nào cũng muốn là người chồng của mình là một người anh hùng của dân tộc. Thấy ở trên TV hoặc là trên báo chí đa số thì nó thiên về miền Bắc, một số ít thì thiên về miền Nam. Nhưng mà gần như là tôi chưa có cơ hội nào để nhìn thấy phim hoặc là bài mà nói về một cách trung thực hay là đứng chính giữa, nhìn về miền Bắc và miền Nam bằng một cặp mắt khách quan, không có thiên về Việt Nam hết. Thì cũng là điều buồn, thì tôi chỉ muốn nhìn thấy những cái ưu điểm nào mình phải giữ, rồi mình sửa đổi những cái khuyết điểm của mình để mà xây dựng một nước Việt Nam. Còn người ngoại quốc thì dĩ nhiên là họ nhìn theo cặp mắt của họ. Có đôi khi tôi không chẳng coi những cái phim mà có nói riêng về một bên này hoặc là nói riêng về một bên kia. Tôi muốn đọc hoặc là tìm một cuốn sách nào nói sự thật về nước Việt Nam. Tại vì sách báo tôi đọc, một là khen, trong cái khen cái chê đó là tuyệt đối, rõ ràng, trắng đen. Mà theo tôi thấy không có cái gì tuyệt đối. Mỗi bên sẽ có cái đúng, có cái sai.
War is a succession of special effects. The war became film before it was shot. Cinema has remained a vast machine of special effects. If the war is the continuation of politics by other means, then media images are the continuation of war by other means. Immersed in the machinery, part of the special effect. No critical distance. Nothing separates the Vietnam War and the super film that were made and continues to be made about it. It is said that if the Americans lost the other, they have certainly won this one.
Những cái hình ảnh đó cũng như là gợi cho cái lòng thương của nhân loại đối với những cái nước chiến tranh.
There's no winner in a war.
Cái hình ảnh đó, theo tôi thấy là hình ảnh xúc động. Cái hình ảnh đó có thể làm thay đổi cái chiều hướng suy nghĩ của chị. Ví dụ như chị nói chị không thích chiến tranh, nhưng mà chị nhìn cảnh một người mẹ ôm đứa con để mà chạy thoát khỏi chiến tranh thì chị sẽ xúc động. Chị nghĩ là chị phải làm cái gì để giúp đỡ. Cái hình ảnh đó hình ảnh rất là đau thương. Cái sự mà thương con của người mẹ, thấy cái hình ảnh đó nêu lên rất là nhiều. Trong chiến tranh thì người mẹ che chở cho cái sự an toàn của con.
Here in Berkeley, it's not so bad, because you have so many Orientals that people recognize, the difference between the Oriental culture. It's like Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese. They're like, oh, they're all the same.
Yeah, I know. Stereotyping.
I don't know how many times I ran into problems where people are like, first of all, they pretend like they're interested enough to ask you, are you Chinese or Japanese? No, Vietnamese. And then they have the nerve to say, oh, yeah, well, same difference, I find that really insulting.
I would too. It's ridiculous.
I'm not so much aware of it until recently, till you told me that story. What is it about the bus? It works both ways,
Oh yeah, that's stereotyping. God.
What happened again? The guy.
Oh, it was really funny because what happened was I was living in Taiwan and I got on the bus and I'm the only white American there. And this guy spots me from across the bus, and of course it's jam-packed and everybody's in each other's armpits and like holding on for dear life because they're maniac drivers. And and he starts making his way back. He wanted to get a little English lesson, which is fine. I mean, I like speaking English to people when they want to learn. But it happens like 24 hours a day, so you're constantly speaking English. And I wanted to learn Chinese too.
Nerves.
Exactly. By that time I felt pretty comfortable with Chinese, so he comes up and starts asking me questions. And I told him in Chinese that I wasn't American, I was French. And he's like, well, so what? I mean, if you're European, I mean, you guys speak everything, right? And I said, no, I just speak French, I don't speak English. She's like, that's impossible. I mean, you're all from the same heritage, you're all European. I'm like, no way. So finally, he just said, okay, and then he started speaking French.
Oh, busted, big time.
Trouble, you know me.
Oh, well, actually, I'm German. You're right.
Oh, God, that was embarrassing. I couldn't believe it. But I just kind of pretend to be snobbish.
So that's why I like this place so much. It's so funny. when I first came here to visit you. It's like, I'm walking between you and Julie. You guys both have
With the
blonde
international
hair,
host,
blue
yeah.
eye. And here's Julie talking Japanese, and you're on my other side speaking Chinese. Here I am. Hi, Pennsylvania. Speaking English. Can't believe it. It was a nice change of role.
Yeah.
Roles.
For years, we learned about our ancestors, the Gauls. We learned that French Indochina was situated in Asia under a hot and humid climate.
Grafting several languages, culture, and realities onto a single body. The problem of translation, after all, is a problem of reading and of identity. Văn Lang, Nam Việt, Hoàng Việt, Đại Việt, An Nam, Bắc Kỳ, Trung Kỳ, Nam Kỳ, French Indochina.
Vietnam, they also call it Nam.
Re-education camps, rehabilitation camps, concentration camps, annihilation camps. All the distinctive features of a civilization are laid bare. The slogans continue to read: work liberates, rehabilitation through work. Here, work is a process whereby the worker no longer takes power, for work has ceased to be his way of living and has become his way of dying. Work and death are equivalents.
In Guam, I recognize a general, she said. He had been one of the richest men in Vietnam. One morning in the camp, a mob of women came up to him. They took off their wooden shoes and began beating him about the head, screaming, "Because of you, my son, my brother, my husband were left behind."
The world is like a butterfly, wrote a Japanese poet of the 17th century. A woman discloses the content of a letter her father recently wrote in prison in Vietnam. A poet looking desperately fragile on photo in his long silver hair, he did not write to complain about his politically condemned status, but only to weep over his eldest daughter's death on the very birthday of Buddha. 40 days after she died, he wrote, she came back in the form of a golden butterfly, encircling him insistently for an entire day. Công dung ngôn hạnh. What are these four virtues persistently required of women? First, công. You'll have to be able, competent, and skillful in cooking, sewing, managing the household budget, caring for the husband, educating the children. All this to save the husband's face. Second, dung. You'll have to maintain a gracious, compliant, and cheerful appearance. First of all, for the husband. Third, ngôn. You'll have to speak properly and softly and never raise your voice, particularly in front of the husband or his relatives. Then fourth, hạnh. You'll have to know where your place is, respect those older than you, and yield to those weaker than you. Moreover, be faithful and sacrifice for the husband. The boat is either a dream or a nightmare, or rather both, a no place. A place without a place that exists by itself, is closed on itself and at the same time is given over to the infinity of the sea. For Western civilization, the boat has not only been the great instrument of economic development, going from port to port as far as the colonies in search of treasures and slaves, but it has also been a reserve of the imagination. It is said that in civilization without boats, dreams dry up, espionage takes the place of adventure, and the police take the place of pirates. Hope is alive when there is a boat, even a small boat. From shore to shore, small crafts are rejected and sent back to the sea. The policy of castaways has created a special class of refugees, the beach people. Each government has its own interpretation of Kiel. Each has its peculiar way of using and appropriating women's images. First appreciated for its denunciation of oppressive and corrupt feudalism, it was later read as an allegory of the tragic fate of Vietnam under colonial rule. More recently, in a celebration of its 200th anniversary, it was highly praised by the government's male official writers for its revolutionary yearning for freedom and justice in the context of the war against American imperialism. For the Vietnamese exile, it speaks for the exodus, or silent popular movement of resistance that continues to raise problems of conscience for the international community.
Lên đến ngoài sông gió, thuyền nhỏ như đại dương, quyết tâm tìm đất sống, đói lạnh bao ngày đường. Chúng tôi là bọt biển trôi dạt giữa mênh mông, chúng tôi lạc bụi trong không gian vô cùng. Tiếng chúng tôi lạc mất trong gió rít từng không. Trên thuyền không nước uống, trên thuyền hết thức ăn, con chúng tôi kiệt sức khóc ra và liếm nhận. Bao nhiêu thuyền đã lật vì sóng gió bất thần, bao nhiêu là mạng sống đã chìm lòng